Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses. And this is Brotherhood by Thor Kiimalehto, Sovereign Grand Master. An article taken from Rosicrucian Digest, Volume 19, Number 4, May 1941. Brotherhood by Thor Kiimalehto, Sovereign Grand Master. A new periodical has come to my attention, Decision. Edited by Klaus Mann, one of the large number of brilliant men compelled to seek refuge on our shores. An article that was of more than casual interest to me was Brazilian Impressions by Stefan Zweig. He begins by saying that originally his ideas about Brazil were the arrogant ideas common to the average European and North American, that Brazil meant one of a number of South American republics not readily distinguishable one from the other. Its climate hot and unhealthy, its political situation always disturbed by revolutions, its finances desolate, its administration corrupted and slovenly, halfway civilized only in the coastal cities. In a word, a land for desperate characters, emigrants and settlers, but by no means one from which to expect intelligent stimulation. His visit proved a complete surprise. The landing at Rio proved one of the most powerful impressions in his life. In fact, his description is so alluring that I desire to visit the South American republics. He found a new civilization. He found new things done boldly and on a grand scale, and at the same time an ancient culture amazingly preserved. He felt that he had gazed into the future of our world. In addition, Brazil has succeeded in solving a problem that has offered a special challenge to our generation. This solution at once invests Brazil with a special intellectual and moral status among all the nations of the world. Let me continue in the words of the author, Stefan Zweig. It consists of the answer to the simplest and at once most necessary of all questions. How can men live together in peace on this earth despite all the different races, classes, colors, creeds and religions? It is a problem that time and again imperiously faces every community, every state. Because of circumstances of special complexity, it confronted Brazil in a particularly dangerous form, and no country has solved it in more felicitous and exemplary fashion than Brazil. To my own way of thinking, Brazil has solved it in a way that commands not only the attention but the admiration of the world. Had Brazil taken over the European mania of nationality and race, it should have become, on the basis of its own racial structure, the most strife-torn, restless and discordant country in the world. Walking the streets and marketplaces, one can still clearly distinguish the various races that go to make up the population. There are the descendants of the Portuguese who conquered and colonized the land. There is the native Indian population which has inhabited it since time immemorial. There are the millions of Indians brought over from Africa in the time of slavery, and since then the millions of Italians, Germans and even Japanese who came as settlers. From the European viewpoint, one might expect each of these groups to adopt a hostile attitude toward the others, the earlier arrivals against the later ones, black against white, American against European, brown against yellow. One might expect majorities and minorities to be locked in unending struggle for rights and privileges. To one's utter surprise, it becomes apparent that all these races, set off from each other by the very color of their skin, live together in complete harmony. That despite their different origins, they outdo one another in their efforts to discard their former peculiarities and become Brazilians as quickly and completely as possible, a new and uniform nation. Brazil has reduced ad absurdum in the simplest way the race problem which haunts our European world, and the significance of this great experiment seems to me to be that it invites emulation. Brazil has simply ignored the alleged validity of this problem. While in our old world the insanity of breeding men racially pure like racehorses or dogs predominates more than ever, the Brazilian nation has for centuries been based only on the principle of free and unrestrained intermixture, of complete equality between black and white, brown and yellow. What in other countries has been committed to paper and parchment merely in theory, absolute civil equality in public as well as in private life, here in Brazil is visibly realized, in the schools, in the government, in the churches, in the professions, in the army, in the universities. It is touching to see even the children come home from school arm in arm, representing every shading of the human skin, chocolate, milk and coffee. And this physical and mental sense of unity reaches up into the highest places, the academies and government offices. There is no color line, no segregation, no arrogant stratification, and nothing illustrates more characteristically how generally accepted is this intermingling that the total absence of any derogatory word in the language. While among ourselves, nation after nation has invented spiteful or mocking designations for the other, the dago or the bocce, the Brazilian vocabulary utterly lacks any deprecating term for the for who would care to boast of absolute racial purity here? This allegedly destructive principle of miscegenation, this horror, this crime against the blood of our obsessed racial theoreticians. Here it is consciously utilized as the cement of a national culture. For 4 centuries, a nation has been surely and steadily rising on this foundation, and miracle of miracles. This constant intermingling and mutual adaptation under similar conditions of life and climate has given rise to a thoroughly individual type, totally lacking in the degenerate characteristics proclaimed by loud-mouthed fanatics of racial purity. Rarely in the world are more beautiful women and children to be seen than among the half-breeds, delicate in stature, gentle in demeanor. It is a joy to look into the dusky faces of students and there to see intelligence paired with a quiet modesty and courtesy. There is a certain softness here, a gentle melancholy that forms a new and highly personal contrast to the sharper and more active type of the North American. The only elements to degenerate in this intermixture are the violent and therefore dangerous contrasts. This systematic breaking up of closed national or racial groups, closed especially for purposes of conflict, has greatly facilitated the creation of a uniform national spirit, and the complete extent to which the second generation already regards itself as purely Brazilian is truly astonishing. It is always the facts with their indisputable, visible force that refute the paper theories of the dogmatist. That is why the moral and material success of the Brazilian experiment, with its complete and conscious negation of all differences of color and race, has perhaps rendered the outstanding contribution toward disposing of a mania that has brought more misery and conflict upon our world than any other. The visitor who has just escaped from Europe's crazily exaggerated irritability is at first incredulous at the total absence of all spitefulness in public as in private life, but then he welcomes it as something infinitely soothing. The fearful tension which has now been tugging at our nerves for a decade is here almost completely eliminated. For here, all conflicts, even those in the social sphere, lack the sharp edge and above all the poisoned barb. The stranger's initial surprise is repeated day after day, in how friendly a fashion, with what utter lack of fanaticism, the people live together within this enormous space. Under the soothing influence of that spaciousness and of the climate, the Brazilian race may indeed be endowed to a lesser degree with those qualities which are often today praised as the only true virtues of a people: brutal striking power, disciplined organization, and unrestrained dynamism. But the results show that the prevailing standards of conciliation stand up better than the aggressive mentality. For more than a century, Brazil has resolved all border disputes with its neighbors, with the single exception of that Paraguay episode senselessly provoked by a militarist gone mad, by means of friendly agreement and appeal to international arbitration bodies. Even its inner upheavals and changes of government have taken place almost entirely without bloodshed. Whatever the form of government, the chief characteristic of this nation has always prevailed: its desire for balance and human understanding. A dictatorship today, it has the least tyrannical of all contemporary dictators. Never has the peace of the world been threatened by the policies of Brazil, and even in a period as full of surprises as our own, one can hardly imagine that there could ever be a change in this basic principle of Brazilian national life. This desire for tolerance, for getting along with others. That is why one of our most promising hopes for the future civilization and pacification of our world rests in the existence of Brazil, a country that still has room for millions upon millions of new citizens, that is only now beginning to assert its world importance. And wherever we see moral forces at work, wherever we see grounds for strengthening our conviction that enough and too many millions of people have already been sacrificed to dim-witted ideologies of segregation. There it is our task in turn to strengthen such tendencies. Wherever in our disturbed era we see hope of a new future in new zones, there it is our duty to point out such possibilities to the conscience of the world. Brothers and sisters, I have quoted at length from this article because I feel that we sorely need this lesson in our lives today. If we are to remain uncontaminated by the filthy propaganda issuing from the publicity departments of the warring factions, we must work for greater unity in our own ranks. There is entirely too much racial discrimination and religious animosity existing in our country today. The seeds of hatred cannot sprout where there is no soil to nourish them. To be honest, because it is the best policy does not make for spiritual advancement. To decide on national and world issues merely on grounds of selfish material considerations reveals a basic spiritual deficiency, a lack of genuine altruism in the national character, a lack of a feeling of true brotherhood. I am compelled to speak frankly. There is a color line in this country and everyone knows it, even in New York City, which is supposed to be more cosmopolitan than most cities. In middle-class apartment houses with a doorman, every Zurgi is considered a domestic and ordered to go through the basement and take the service elevator. Our Americans of revolutionary descent consider New York, because of its cosmopolitan population, a foreign city. It is disgraceful that among our minority populations such conditions should exist. Paul Robeson, the brilliant actor, a Columbia University graduate, Phi Beta Kappa, and a successful lawyer, tells in the story of his life the petty discriminations to which he was subjected. He was happy only in England and in France. He tells that if one of their number should be white enough to pass as a white man, his fellow Negroes will never give him away by acknowledging him in public. The finest employment agencies will not register Jews, no matter how brilliant and refined. The Jewish young men and women are driven to the subterfuge of changing their names, assuming a different religion, and having their faces operated on in order to get a job for which they are fitted. Do I blame these people? I do not. Every human being is entitled to reach that level that his ability, his character, and his efforts entitle him to. That jobs should be handed out on the basis of racial and religious affiliation, family connections, and social background is a disgrace for a democratic country, the very constitution of which was drawn up to erase forever these distinctions that have proved the curse of Europe and of older civilizations. In ancient Greece, anyone who was not a born Greek was considered a barbarian. In ancient Rome, there was no status outside of the civic Romans, the Roman citizen. Today, a philosophy of an age that is past, a philosophy that marks a moving back, not a moving forward of the hands of the clock of progress, is attempting to make people race conscious, is now attempting to draw arrogant distinctions between Aryan and non-Aryan. The genuine American spirit is that of Abraham Lincoln, the man of the people, the simple, genuine love of all mankind, and of Walt Whitman, who made no distinction of race, creed, color, or background. The spirit of other groups, prevalent in certain sections of our country, is not the genuine American spirit. The political and economic problems of emigrants in their native countries should not be transplanted here and become seeds of differences. We as students of the Rosicrucian philosophy know that cosmic law prevails. Cause and effect are predominant. Let us search our own souls. Let us examine our own actions. Have we uprooted every weed of discrimination, prejudice, and intolerance? Are we ready to regard every problem in the light of universal human needs? Are we ready to make the necessary sacrifices so that liberty and justice shall prevail? As the prophet Micah said, "Hath not one God made us? Are we not children of one Father?" Let us learn the first principle of brotherhood through love, not through the whip of tears and blood and agony. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.